All right, we do have 6 board members in attendance. We have Javen Gonzalez on Zoom with us, so we can go ahead and get started. We do have quorum. My name is Ana Lopez. I'm the Community Service Representative for District 6, and I will be leading tonight's meeting. Councilmember Ballard will not be able to join us today. We can start with introductions from the board, from our DAP members. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves and what neighborhood you represent.
Great, I'm Lisa Tatum and I live in Olmsted.
I'm Tom Jennings, I represent North Riverside.
I'm Bill Washburn, for Sherwood Land and Meridian Gardens.
Thanks, you were in Riverside. Mark, they very good.
All right, thank you. Fixing our camera for online audience. With that, we can go ahead and call this agenda call to order. Do I have an approval of the agenda for tonight's agenda, September 11th, 2023?
Move, we approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Perfect. All right, everybody in favor of that?
Yep.
All right, we have 6-0. Do we have an approval of the minutes for the August 14th, 2023 meeting?
I move we approved August 14th meeting.
Gotcha.
I'll second.
All right, Bill will second. All in favor?
Um,
All right, it looks like it passes. 0. With that, do we have anybody with our Wichita Fire Department for a staff presentation tonight? All right, with that, we can go ahead and move to our Wichita Police Department.
Hello, I'm Oscar Soto. I'm here from Patrol North. I am the community police officer for 48 beats, and I recently inherited 49 beats. So for those of you guys who don't know me, and basically I go from 13th Street, and it kind of goes out into a V over the Hoover, and then hydraulic, and then I go as far north as 62nd. So it's kind of a big area. So if you have any concerns or complaints, you can always reach me best by email, and that's jsoto@wichita.gov. It's on the website as well.
You got a card?
I do. I can grab some and hand them out. So I'm still trying to get my feet wet up there. I've done the one meeting, and I'll have another one I think this week. So, and like I said, I don't really have much. Does anyone have any questions for me?
So, from a personal standpoint, I guess I'd like to, and maybe this isn't the right time to do it. I get with the individuals I need to. One of our family members had a truck stolen out of St. Louis. And his assistant somehow facilitated tracking that vehicle or locating that vehicle and recovering. And I'd like to understand that.
It's okay.
It's one of those late times when I'm really glad Big Brother was watching.
Yeah, I'll be with you on that. I'm not sure which one it is.
Okay.
I'll look into it.
Thank you.
Anyone?
That's a large area you covered.
It is.
If a resident calls, how long does it take you to get to, on?
So,
On average.
I don't respond to 911 calls on community policing, so
No.
the average response time out there, I don't. But I mean, they have beat officers that are assigned to those areas, so they would have somebody assigned to specifically 49 beat and specifically to 48 beat. So usually they'll try to send the beat officer first. If they're not available, they'll try to send the next nearest officer to that call. So. Right. Yes, sir.
Residents currently we have visits.
I'm not sure as far as citations go, the numbers or where they're at. That's
The rate traffic.
okay. I'll have our traffic officers know. I know they write some on 13. There's
I've never seen people say
okay. I'll let them know about it.
One more quick question. Are you guys, not you guys, is WPD still roughly 25% understaffed for budget?
We're right at 100 officers. Yeah. We're short of 100. Plus
The budget's around 400.
right. Commission officers. I'll get you this one. I'm around.
I just want to introduce myself. I'm Officer Henry and I am on 19 beat and I recently adopted 11 beat. So I pick up where he's up at Hoover and I go completely west. So everything from 13 north of 13 basically from Hoover clear to 109th Street, clear to Maine. So I also have a large area, but I'm still learning 11 beat. I've been working on a couple of things up there. There's a couple of events I wanted to kind of mention, if okay, I could have a couple of seconds. I just remind everybody that ICP opens this Sunday, from 11 to 5, and it's everywhere from Lynn to basically Hillside. So all along Douglas, don't forget that that's going to be shut down on Sunday from 11 to 5. That way people can walk, and be vendors or riding bikes, walking dogs, all that good stuff. Also, our Second Chance Thursday event is gonna be September 28th. That's where, if you have a traffic citation with the city of Wichita and you need to get a new court date, or if you want to pay your fine, get a warrant, you can clear the warrant without you having to go to jail. We also have the court system there, so if you want to pay that fine or set up or ask court about what do I need to do for court, you can do that. And we also have you can ask them questions, and we have about 25 people usually per event get their driver's license back that haven't had it in years. So that's a really good event. If you know somebody, please, it's gonna be at Hyde Park, September 28th from 9. And basically Officer Vomitron, he's a little bit Douglas and Seneca area. I know that he is constantly working with the hot team and the homeless problem that we're having around that food truck area. So he said that he is working on that area continuously. He's down there all the time, so he's going to need to mention that. And like I said, I'm new to the area, we'll try to make contact, so if you have any questions for me for that area, unless Officer will answer everything. Yes,
What are the times they will speak?
11 to 5. Anything else? All right, thank you guys. Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you. I put some business cards up there, this payment, so everyone wants one of mine.
Oh, thank you. Have a good one, guys. All right, with that, we can go ahead and move to our Wichita Public Library report. Hi, Ann.
Hello, my name is Ann Ethan. I'm the library branch manager here at Evergreen, and I also manage the Money Angelo branch. I saw that there was a whole lot of zoning cases on the agenda tonight. I'll be brief. I'm gonna post my written report on the website. Bilingual preschool story time starts back up this week. The last time I was here, one of the board members asked me about story time, and I wasn't able to provide a very good answer. It's both English and Spanish. The welcome song is in Spanish. There's usually 2 picture books that are totally English that our librarian reads. Then 1 picture book that is an English picture book that's been translated into Spanish. So read a line in English, read a line in Spanish, read a line in English, read a line in Spanish. And the goodbye song is both English and Spanish. So it's good for anyone, whether or not they actually speak Spanish in the home. Sarah, our librarian, and Lenny, our library assistant, who do the program, they're both Spanish speakers. And they can modify the content of the program based on this week's audience. If there's more Spanish speakers in the group, there'll be more Spanish in the story time.
Wow.
So, anyway, lots of stuff happening at the library. I'll post my report. So, any questions about story time? Ages 3 to 5, Thursday mornings at 10:30, starting this week, Thursday.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, we can go ahead and move over to our public portion of this agenda. There were no scheduled items. We can go ahead and move on to item number 6, which is the off agenda items. If there's anybody in the public who needs to make a presentation or has a comment on an item that is not in our agenda, they can go ahead and do so at this time. Yep, you can go ahead and sir, if you want to state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Tom Ewert. My address is 5820 North Elysian. I'm the District 6 representative on the park board. And there's a survey that's coming out right now that it's 5 minutes. It takes some time to do that. Ask questions, what do you use, what park to go to, what should be approved, what is not. I can pass this around and I'll ask Donna to post the link. There's a little bit of a competition. There's 6 commissioners and mayor's representatives, so we're trying to get District 6 to get the most response. It really only takes 5 minutes, but you can take a picture and you can follow the link as well. There's a camera right here, then go there. So I appreciate it. If you have questions about park board or any issues like that, let me know. I encourage you to go to Open Street as well on Sunday.
How long is the survey open?
1 month.
1 month.
Yeah.
Just started.
It just started today. She's gonna announce the results of which district wins at our next meeting.
So what, we're supposed to go to our district?
Gonna go to District 6
Okay. Yeah.
and, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. And we can go ahead and pass that sheet around. So if any members of the public want to go ahead and scan that, we will also make that available on social media. All right, do we have anybody else who wants to speak on the public agenda portion of this meeting? All right, with that, we can go ahead and move on to our new business part of the agenda. And for that, we do have members who are going to be presenting this virtually. Let me just pull this up here. All right, Logan and Andrew, go ahead and I'll let you take over for your presentation for the 2024-2029 Consolidated Plan Entitlement Funding for CDBG Home and ESG.
Perfect. Can you see my screen all right? Are you guys able to hear me and see my screen? Okay, I got confirmation from someone in the chat, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay and in the room as well. My name is Logan Bradshaw. I'm the Assistant Director of Housing and Community Services for the City of Wichita. And tonight, myself and my team are here to speak with you about the 2024-2029 HUD Consolidated Plan, as well as the first program year annual action plan. Before I dive really far in the woods in this presentation, I want to preface this with 2 things I'd like for you to think about as we're making our presentation. First, what are community needs that are facing your district? And second, what are community needs that are facing Wichita at large that you are perceptive to and would like to maybe share? So as we make our presentation, as we educate you about the consolidated plan and our grant programs and our consultant that we're bringing on board to help us, carry out this plan and work through this process, we'd like for you to think about what the information we're providing in the context of those 2 questions. What community needs within your district and what community needs within Wichita at large. So each year we do receive an annual allocation of funds from HUD for community development purposes. Those funds that we receive on an annual basis are here on this slide. I'll give you a high-level overview of what these are, as well as what funding allocations we're currently receiving for each of these 3 grants. And a little bit later on in the presentation, Andrew will go over, specifics on what these grants are and the ways in which we currently strategize and spend these funds in our current consolidated plan period. So the first grant we have is our largest grant. It's our Community Development Block Grant. You're going to hear us call it CDBG. We do live in a world of acronyms in our department. This is by far and large our, like I said, our largest grant, but also our most flexible funding source out of the three. We receive for the current program year just over $2.9 million in CDBG funds. For home investment partnerships or our home grant, this is all about creating affordable housing opportunities for low to moderate income households and families. And then our home allocation currently is just over $1.7 million. Finally, we have our Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. This is the grant we have to address homelessness in our community, and our allocation for ESG is much less than the other two, as you can see here, just over $250,000 for the current program year. I do want to make note, we are providing you these funding allocations just for the basis of conversation to give you an idea of how much we work with within each grant. But as you might imagine, these are subject to Congress's approval, and so our allocations do increase and decrease on an annual basis. It just depends. So we're here to talk to you about consolidated plans and annual action plans, so it'd be prudent for us to educate you on what those two plans are. A consolidated plan is a tool that helps jurisdictions assess both affordable housing and community development needs within the context of current local market conditions. This is a plan that we are required to submit to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development every 5 years. And what it does is, as we're looking at affordable housing needs and as we're looking at community development needs in the context of what's currently affecting our market, it helps us to determine investment and spending priorities for that 5-year period. Consolidated plans are carried out, or I like to think they're powered through what we call annual action plans. And so annual action plans brings it down on a more granular level. It allocates specific funding amounts for specific activities. So think about a program year action plan as a means to the end. And so it's how we're going to accomplish the goals and the spending priorities and address the community needs that are outlined within our 5-year consolidated plan. HUD doesn't like to make anything easy. Our program year does not run on a typical calendar year like the city budget does. So our program year actually runs from the middle of the year, so July 1st, all the way through June 30th of the following year. So our con plan period that we're planning for currently will run from July 1st of 2024 and go all the way through June 30th of 2029. And our first program year action plan is required to be submitted to HUD at the same time, and that allocates funds for the period of July 1 of 2024 through June 30th of the following year. So before I kick it over to Andrew, to give you a overview of our grants and how we tend to spend those, or are currently spending those funds, I want to give you an idea of what our consolidated plan and annual action plan timeline looks like. So we started this process really back in May of this past year with preliminary planning, as well as we started the process of procuring a consultant to help bring us through this process. And then this month, we're really starting agency consultations. We're starting the required public consultation period of the process, which I'm sure our consultant WFN will talk about here in a little bit. But that really starts with tonight's district advisory board meeting. You're our first district advisory board. We're going to be attending all 6 DABs over the course of September and October. We're actually hopping on another one right after this one. And so that public engagement period will kind of culminate at the end of October, when we will bring basically a high-level consolidated plan presentation that summarizes the results of our consultations. We're working on a survey that will be released hopefully at the end of this week. And we'll make sure that we push that out through Anna and your newsletter, and then that you have the access to that survey so that you can pass it on to others in the community as well. And so we will then present the survey results and the culmination of our consolidated plan consultation efforts at the end of October at a council workshop. And then after we present those preliminary considerations to council, that's when the real work starts on actually drafting the plan. And so we'll be working on that with our consultant between November and March of next year, or I should say March of 2024, not March of this year. And then once the plans are developed and they're ready to go out for public comment, that'll take place in April. And we'll actually be coming back to you as part of that process to show you, here's what the consolidated plan looks like, and here's how we are proposing to allocate funds for the first program year. And then we'll bring that back to city council at the close of the public comment period for our final public hearing and for their review and consideration before we're required to submit that to HUD no later than the middle of May of 2024. And so at this point, like I mentioned, I'm going to kick it over to Andrew to go over high level, more detailed information about the 3 grants. And then at that point, we'll kick it over back to WFN so you can meet them, learn a little bit about them, our consultants and our partners throughout this process. And then we'll open it up for probably the most important part of this, and that's the conversation period, where we can talk about what needs exist within your district and then Wichita as well.
Thanks, Logan. As Logan mentioned, I'm going to go over so our 3 grant programs and the current funding for each of those and what we're doing with those programs. But first, just a kind of an overview of CDBG program in general. For CDBG, for a project to qualify for CDBG funding, it must meet one of the national objectives, which one of 3 national objectives, which is to benefit low to moderate income persons. It could be a project that prevents slum or blights or address an urgent community need. For CDBG eligible projects, they have to be used for eligible spending activities, and not less than 70% of spending must benefit low to moderate income persons. And some additional things to consider when it comes to CDBG. There is a limit there's a cap on public service spending, which I'll go over here in just a moment. But that cap is right now, it's just over $1.1 million. Funds can only be used based on a memorandum of understanding when it comes to other city departments, or for contractual services with private vendors. There's an RFP process that they must go through. And lastly, funds cannot be allocated to a specific provider or for an ineligible purpose. So right now, for CDBG, the funding strategy that's currently being implemented, we have funding that goes towards infrastructure and park improvements for low moderate income neighborhoods. We have economic development, which can be small business assistance loans, Propel loans. We have our popular home repair program that's available for homeowners that are meet income qualifications. And then we have MABCD demolition and clearance of blighted or unsafe structures. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, for our public services, there is a cap on that spending. And right here on this slide kind of details all of the public services that we're currently funding. The first being through the city manager's office, the Office of Community Services. That's your neighborhood resource centers, so Evergreen, Atwater, Colvin, those centers. We are able to fund the salary for our Housing First project coordinator and other homeless assistants there. We do also fund 3 different domestic violence shelters here in the city. And we also look at youth crime prevention and enrichment activities. Again, we have 3 different programs that we're funding through that as well. And then we have our training and employment. Next, for our home grant funding, currently we're looking at home ownership activities. So we have our Home 80 program that we offer to the community. We also, for housing development, redevelopment activities, That provides gap funding for our home development loan program. And then you'll see the Community Housing Development Organization, or as we call it, refer to it as CHODO. We're responsible, or we have to assure that 15% of our funding goes towards or set aside for CHODOs. And then we have our administration admin funding for home as well. And lastly, our ESG currently looks like the slide here. It says, as we see, it's homeless assistance. There is a 60% cap there. Homeless assistance, that's your emergency shelters across around town. And we have homeless prevention, which is Center of Hope, Salvation Army, those programs that are there to try and prevent individuals or persons from becoming homeless. We have the Rapid Rehousing Program, which provides funding for homeless individuals that are ready to be able to live on their own, live in housing. And we also have the administration admin funds for ESG as well. And before we pass it over to our consultants, for them to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about WFN, and then start the community needs portion of our presentation. This is kind of a brief overview or history of how WFN was chosen for consulting with us. But funding from program year 2022 and 2023 was set aside to hire a consultant for the preparation and submission of our 2024-2029 consolidated plan. In May of this year, the search for a consultant began with the release of an RFP. And in July of 2023, this summer, WFN Consulting was chosen to lead the development of the 2024 through 2029 consolidated plan. So at this time, I'll go ahead and pass it over to our consultants, Ms. Erica Fambro and LaShonda Wells, and they're going to introduce themselves and kind of go over the next steps.
Hello, everybody. I'm Erica Fambro, and so happy to be joining your meeting this evening. I wanted to just give you a little bit of an overview of WFN and who we are and what we do out in the community. So I'm just gonna minimize some things here. So WFN, our company is an industry expert in managing HUD grants. So we've been doing this for over 40 years. Not me personally, but the company has been in existence for over 40 years and working with client jurisdictions all over the country, working with consolidated plans, like Logan explained earlier, analysis of impediments, fair housing information, providing training to jurisdictions on how to administer these funds, how to best connect and engage with communities. And we've been doing that for a very long time. I'll get into a little bit about my background on the next slide. And like I said, we've worked with clients throughout the United States, and we're excited to do some work here in the Wichita area. So we can go to the next slide. So like Andrew said, I'm Erica Fambro. I'm the Director of Consulting for WFN. I joined the company back in 2010. So I've been with them for a little over 13 years now, preparing consolidated plans, action plans, have a lot of those under my belt at this time. I also worked as a deputy director for a large jurisdiction about the same size as Wichita, and then a community that was slightly larger. I worked as the director of that one for about 7 years. And this is all during my tenure as with WFN. So now I'm working in the consulting arm of our business full time. So we're working out with various communities, assisting them with plans and community engagement and things like that. And then also on the call, we have LaShonda Wells. She's been with us for about 8 years now, and she has quite a bit of experience under her belt as well. She also served as the deputy director in one of the larger jurisdictions that we work with for about 5 years. And she now is working full-time in the consulting arm of the business. So we're excited to get to know your community, get to learn about some of the needs, some of the challenges that you have in the community, and how to best use these funds to address some of those needs and challenges. So I think that's it for my slide. If you'll go to the next slide, is that me or you, Andrew?
I think at this point, oh, go ahead, Ryan, sorry.
No, go ahead.
At this point, that concludes our presentation. Sorry, we're all like fighting to talk. It concludes our presentation. And so at this point, we are seeking feedback from the district advisory board as to those two questions I kind of led off with. What community needs are facing District 6, and then what community needs are facing Wichita at large.
All right. Thank you, Logan. Thank you, Ryan. With that, we'll bring it back to the DAB for comments or questions. And we are going to try to use the mic because I know they were having some issues with audio.
Like your face.
Hello? I know, right? This is the second time. Oh, there you go. It's working. Logan, can you hear us now? Is that a little better? All right, so we're gonna use the mic to go ahead and ask questions so they can have a clear sound while it goes forward. If you have any questions, you can pass the mic.
I'm gonna take a moment and think about it. There's so many.
When I first heard about this, I went to there was $5.5 million that was, the city council agreed to accept from the federal government back in December of 22. And I wondered if that was any kind of overlap or
Did you say 5.5?
Yes.
Yes, so while that's actually our home ARP allocation. So jurisdictions across the country, based on size, population, needs, things like that, received, I think, but actually believe all entitlement communities actually received an additional allocation of home funding, specifically called Home ARP as part of the American Rescue Plan Act. And while Home ARP plan funds are not specifically covered within our consolidated plan, we have a separate Home ARP allocation plan that we were required to submit, and we've been through the planning process on that. But it is the same grant that you see us talking about here, home. It's just an additional authorized amount as part of the American Rescue Plan. And those home funds specifically have to be used to provide various qualifying populations that are all tied to homelessness. So it's about production of affordable housing and provision of affordable housing and supportive services to individuals that are homeless. And so it's a little bit different than the home that we're talking about this evening. And this plan doesn't specifically govern Home ARP, but you're right. That's actually being administered out of our department as well. It's just separate from the consolidated plan. Annual act.
And I'm kind of curious about where this has gone. On this, it was $5.5 billion in federal funds to be used to create a campus with a homeless shelter, affordable housing units, and a social services hub. And property for the campus has already been purchased. But there hasn't, the Board of Ed doesn't follow up from that. And I just wondered if the funding overlapped or if this new funding could assist, thinking around 11.
It could. So specifically, one funding source that we talked about this evening, ESG, could be used to complement that Home ARP project in the future. And so that could be additional operational funding that could be used to support activities that might go on at that, we're calling it the multi-agency campus, or the MAC is the acronym we've come up for it in the interim. There's still a lot of things to flesh through with that. A site hasn't even been identified. We have brought on a developer partner And we're still in the really early stages of that process, but absolutely, these funds could be programmed and allocated in the next 5-year period to help support initiatives that could be carried out with Home Art. Is that something that you think, might be needed? in the
Yeah, that
community?
was exactly what I was thinking. Thank you.
Oh, I can hear you a lot better now than before. She was a little grumbly, so thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
So I've got a couple of questions. First of all, I did just a quick little bit of kitchen arithmetic, as I call it. And it looks like the current year, I'm assuming that's 2023, funding is around $5 million. And if that's correct, then when I run percentages on it, about 60% of it's going to CDBG, about 34% to home, 6% to ESG. I'd like to know how that's panned out year to date for us. Do those percentages look like they're the right allocations for the condition the community's in right now? That would be my first question.
So unfortunately, the amounts that you saw on those slides, and I can actually share my screen again, we don't get to say this percentage of our funding goes towards CDBG. The federal government actually tells us specifically, this is the amount of funding you have for CDBG. And I'm sure Erica and LaShondra have been doing this longer than probably both Brian and I combined, so they could probably elaborate. But these are actually formula allocations that we received. And so we don't get a say in, oh, I want more funding for ESG. I feel like we get that feedback annually that we'd like to see more funding go for homelessness, but unfortunately we don't have a say in that.
Right. So yeah, Logan is exactly correct. Those are determined by funding levels that Congress sets for each one of the programs. And then that amount is divided up by the number of grantees that are included in that pot. So the city does not get to determine how much funding is allocated towards each grant program. But the good thing about it, there are, as Logan said at the beginning of her presentation, the CDBG program is pretty flexible. So sometimes you can use that grant to offset some things that may be necessary for to address homelessness and things like that. So there are ways to complement the grants to make sure that you're getting the best outcome for your community.
Okay, I think that answers my question. Got a couple more. I noticed administrative costs noted a couple of times during the presentation. I'm just curious whether that administration fee or costs are part of that $5 million, and if so, what percentage is that? And then a follow-on question is, are the costs for WFN engagement included in that?
So each grant actually has a specific amount or cap of funding that can be used for administration costs. So for CDBG, we cannot use more than 20% of the grant for administration. Home, it's 10%, I believe, and then ESG is 7.5% in order to administer the funds. And so that's correct. The cost for the consultant was allocated in the 2022-2023 program year. So the one that started in 2022 and ended in 2023. And we have up to 6 years to spend those funds. And so we had to take it out of our administration pot of funding in order to pay for the consultant. And a mix of CDBG and home administration is being utilized to pay for the consultant contract.
Well, I hate to hog it, but I got one more question. Under CDBG, and this digging a little deep, I'm sorry. I noticed one of the things in there is for demolition and clearance. Do you, or does the program facilitate or offer up auctioning or some form of purchase for properties that may be targeted that could be rehabbed?
No, so we do this in partnership with an MOU that we have with the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department. MABCD, it's a common conception that when the city comes in and demolishes a property that's dangerous or unsafe, that the city actually comes in possession of it or has the ability to auction off the land or try and repurpose that property before demoing it. The city actually doesn't ever come into possession. Where those properties are demolished and then cleared, the lot's then cleared. Because there's exigent health and safety issues, there's blight problems on the property. And so the answer to your question is no. No auction type program has ever been facilitated in conjunction with that funding.
Question.
It is, yeah. My question is maybe just about the scope of this. If we have, is this the only money that the city is putting towards these programs, or is there other money, you know, beyond these 3 grants that the city is putting up?
So these are funds that we have to carry out these activities. So for example, you know, the city does infrastructure improvements with general funds all the time. They do park improvements with their general fund budget out of the Park and Recreation Department. I'm trying to think, there is no additional general fund dollars that go into the home repair program. That's 100% administered by the CDBG pot of funding. The city does have additional funds that the city county actually, and the BCD is a joint city county department. They have other funds that go into demolition and clearance of unsafe structures. There is no additional general fund dollars budgeted for the Office of Community Services for Atwater, Evergreen, and Colvin at this time. We pay 100% for our Housing First Program coordinator. There is other funding sources that go into these subrecipient agreement contracts for DV and youth. But nothing else is coming from the city side. We're the only city investment. Training and employment, that would be our Way to Work Youth Employment Program, which there's a little bit of additional grant funding that comes from our department, Community Services Block Grant, which is not governed by the consolidated plan, but there is some support, just a drop in the bucket for that one. Let's see here. And then 100% of home and then 100% of our ESG funding, the only city investment comes from our department.
Okay, thank you. I guess for maybe the CDBG, it might be nice to know what those overlaps are, just to know where there's other opportunities, maybe to underfund it, to focus it more on some of those ones where there isn't as much overlap with other funding. But I appreciate that clarification.
Gotcha. Yeah, no problem.
All right, with that, we can bring it back to the public. If any member of the public, if you have any questions or comments, this would be the time. All right, and what we're gonna do is you can go ahead and come up here to the podium. I'm gonna leave the mic at the podium so you guys can go ahead and ask those questions.
She mentioned, my name is William Draper. I live at 1035 North McLean. And we see a lot of homelessness along the river there on McLean Boulevard. I travel through Dallas frequently, and I come up I-75 where it intersects I-30, and I look off to my right towards the Kansas State Fair, and I see a campus, and it's full of little cottages, little metal cottages. And I'm wondering if that's some sort of homeless shelter, and if we could have something in Wichita that would provide just little cottages where people could go to get in and out of the rain, someplace where they could lock their stuff when they're out trying to find a job, so that we don't have situations where people are camping along the river and breaking into self-storage lockers, cutting people's locks off and using those as their private apartments. It's a real problem if you have your stuff in a self-storage locker, find out somebody's been broken in and been sleeping in it or something like that. So I would ask this lady here if there is some sort of micro housing project included in all this where people could come rent or be given a small shelter. A lot of these people don't want to really come in out of the rain, but they just want a place to put their stuff and put their sleeping bag down for a while, but they don't want to really take on the responsibility of housing or living in an apartment building or something like that. So I asked that question.
Pretty simple answer. So right now, we don't program any funds for something to that end, but it sounds like that would be something that you would be interested in and seeing in the community. And so we can make sure to take note of that and include that in the consolidated planning consultation process.
Thank you, Logan. Go ahead, sir.
John Todd, I live at 1559 North Payne side. One of the things that I heard mentioned was the extra money going to demolition and clearance. I'm a little concerned about that because basically, I'm going to show you a couple pictures. These are houses that the MABCD, the Board of Code Standards and Appeals, recommended demolition. Frankly, this is with a little bit of TLC would be an excellent starter home. And we need to be working towards creating starter homes. And so when you put funds in the hands of compliance people who are not particularly good they may be good at finding code problems, but they're not good at the consulting. What are the people problems that create and putting people in touch with resources that they could use to do the rehabilitation? And a big one that's really needed is helping people write their wills, do probate type things, dealing with those type of things. And so we have houses that slip through the cracks because those problems are not solved. They're consulting problems, they're people problems. And we put emphasis on compliance rather than on people. And I think the emphasis is wrong because these type of houses need to be saved. These are, I can't think of anything better than to have quality. I mean, these were scheduled to be bulldozed. Can you imagine what these look like with a coat of paint and some TLC?
Those look a whole lot better than my first home. Well, it's hard to know what's going on the inside, but I feel like there's a period of time where the city offers these for sale.
No, they don't.
Straight.
Actually, when the city, when the Board of Code Standards and MABC, Metropolitan Area Building Construction Department, will recommend certain houses. Usually they're houses that have code violations, but they always have code violations. And they're vacant. And we have people problems and not always bricks and mortar type things that can be solved. And so there's a real need to help people with their problems, running classes on how to do probates, how to do wills, how to do cessation type things. I mean, it sounds kind of simple basically, but it's not.
Still, a lot of people don't think.
And so a house like this, if they solve the title problem, it might sell for $20,000 or $30,000. And when it gets bulldozed, guess what happens? It gets hauled to the dump. And now you got a vacant lot that has a tendency to be weeds and trash and be a blighting influence. And what happens to the owner of the property? Now they've got a $8,000 to $10,000 bulldozing fee to pay as a special assessment. Well, I watch these lots go back to taxes routinely. And it's not uncommon for a lot to sell for $2,000 to $3,000. That's not enough to cover the bulldozing fee. So the people who actually own these, or the estates who own them, wind up with zero money in their pocket. And two things could happen if we did it the other way. We could wind up with low cost entry-level houses, and we could wind up with estates or people with cash in their pocket. It's a win type situation. Consultation versus compliance is what it really is. So houses are not just brick and mortar, they're people. And so my recommendation, maybe they should use some of the money to start a consultation service. In fact, I heard a couple of ladies talk about consultation. Maybe they need to put their heads together and figure out how we can begin to solve some of these problems. So we don't wind up taking people's property without compensation. And we're destroying, drive through Northeast Wichita sometime. It looks like a tornado's gone through that area. That's a tragedy, my friends. We need to do better than that. We need to capture these incubator entry-level houses and promote home ownership. That's where your wealth begins. And it's the beginning of a step for uplift for the community and the city. Thank you so much. I'll stand questions.
Thank you. Do we have anybody from? Go ahead.
My name's Terry McMillan, 4729 North Sullivan, and I'd just like to suggest, I don't know how this money necessarily, whether it's approved for this or not, but I volunteer and help with Habitat for Humanity. And I don't know if some of the home funding can be funded that direction to give them some assistance to continue to build those homes like they do. And if you've never been involved with Habitat for Humanity, it is one of the ways that people are able to help themselves with a 0% loan and own a home. And so that's why I would think if some of the home funding money could go that direction, it might help in that manner.
Yeah, so we do currently fund Habitat for Humanity with gap financing for the development of brand new single family homes through our housing development loan program funding, as well as there are many individuals who are actually homeowners who are then purchasing those homes that tap into our Home 80 program through homeownership activities. So we'll note your support for those two current existing programs. Thank you.
And really, the other side of it is the programs like SCAD, some of the weatherization programs that keep people in their homes, keep the homes updated as they're before they start to continue.
Thank you, Logan. Do we have anybody else from members of the public who would like to comment or have any questions on this specific agenda item? Do we have any other questions or comments from the town? Logan, we don't have any more questions or comments, and I think the action was to provide comment, which we've already done.
All right, thank you so much. Like I mentioned in the presentation, we are in the final stages of putting a survey together, and we hope to have that out by the end of this week. If not the end of this week, it'll be out next week. And so we'll, once we get that survey put together, we will be sending that to you on a hopefully for distribution in the district newsletter, and then would ask that you would share that with the district advisory board so they can then disseminate that out to individuals who live in District 6. So we thank you for your time this evening. Like I mentioned, we do have another DAB to hop over to, so we're going to do that now. But thank you so much for your comment and your feedback and for giving us a little slice of your evening. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Logan. Thank you. All right, with that, we can go ahead and move on to our agenda item number 8, which is planning case, conditional use 2023-0006. We have Christina. You want me to use the mic? You don't have to use the mic. You don't have to. If I have something that says that there are issues with the audio, I'll let you know. I'll give this back to you now. Thank you. I think I did it all. You did this.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Christina Reed. I'm an associate planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Department, and this is also my district, so I'm excited to be here. This is Con 2023-00036. I am presenting this on behalf of my supervisor, Philip Siebenbergen, so I'll try to answer any questions to the best of my ability. The applicant, who is Hemenda Bhakta and Jason Bradley, they're requesting a conditional use to amend the existing conditional use from last year to increase the permitted area for vehicle and equipment sales. And the case from last year is Con 2022-00010. The property in question is zoned LC Limited Commercial. It's located at 5534 West Central Avenue, which is on the northeast corner of North Hoover and West Central. The subject site is currently developed with a car lot, a restaurant and bar, a barber shop, and a restaurant. So in 2022, Anna, if you wouldn't mind scrolling down to the one of the site plans. Let's do it. Yeah, so this one here, yes. So so in 2022, the subject site was approved for vehicle and equipment sales per this site plan here, but it only restricted the vehicle sales to the southwest corner of the site. So if we want to go to the next site plan, here we go. So they're looking to expand the display area to the entire site. This also includes demolition of the restaurant building on the east side of the site and expanding the vehicle sales office building. So the current display area encompasses about 0.18 acres, which accommodates 27 display spaces for vehicles. The revised site plan would expand it to over half an acre and will accommodate up to 77 display spaces. Vehicle and equipment sales are subject to supplementary use regulations of the Unified Zoning Code, and those are attached to your report. So the property is already properly screened per the Unified Zoning Code and the Wichita Landscape Ordinance. So a little bit of case history, as I mentioned earlier, it was approved for vehicle and equipment sales last year. It was also approved for a conditional use for a nightclub in the city as accessory to a bar. Now, when I say nightclub, I don't mean like an actual nightclub. I mean, if you have live music and entertainment or live music and alcohol in the same space, that's considered to be a nightclub in the city per our terms. Skipping ahead here, the proposed application is in conformance with the community investments plan. Because if we look at the 2035 Wichita Future Growth Concept Map, which I believe is, yep, that one right there. So the Future Growth Concept Map identifies the area to be appropriate for commercial use. The requested conditional use is in partial conformance with the goals of the Wichita Places for People plan. If you look at strategy 6, which says that we should encourage infill and redevelopment that is contextual to the environment in which it is occurring, the proposed vehicle and equipment sales brings infill to a current parking lot. However, if we look at the current condition, it's located within an area of opportunity. The expansion of auto sales it's coming at the cost of a demolition of a viable structure. This doesn't promote maximizing public investment of infrastructure and does not contribute to creating walkable places for the neighborhood. Based on the information available at the time the staff report was prepared, we are recommending that the conditional use be approved, subject to the conditions that are listed in your report. I'll just go over a few of them here, just to emphasize them. So the conditional use is limited to the sale of cars and light pickup trucks, and it does not allow outside repair or maintenance services unless a building is provided for this activity. This recommendation is based on the golden rules that we all follow that are listed in the report. I'll just skip ahead to the last one here. At the time the staff report was prepared, we did not have any public comment on this conditional use. And with that, I will stand for questions. Yes.
A couple of them. I didn't have time to look these up. I apologize. As I was looking through the supplemental use restrictions, it noted a couple of them. And I guess I'd like to know, if you can, define about what they are. One of them is on lighting. It's in section, I think it's IC-B-4, B.4. I'm concerned about both noise and light pollution from the surrounding neighborhood as this property expands for more lot usage for vehicle sales.
Mm-hmm.
Can you provide any enlightenment, so to speak, on what those two,
Can I shed some light on there?
absolutely, without too much noise.
That is a great question. I know that, the lighting has to be projecting away from residential areas. I know that there's still going to be a little bit of light as a result, especially if they're, closer to the
You're
edge.
gonna get some ambient light.
Yeah, I just, that's all I can say on that matter, but I can look into this and get back to you.
It'll be too late, but
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
What about noise?
I don't believe we have any,
Section IVC dot 6 is noted,
yes.
whatever that is.
Again, I do apologize. I don't know the exact wording of that section. But I can get back to you.
I guess I'd like to know for future reference.
Yes, absolutely.
Because both of those would be concerned for me if I lived in that area.
I guess I've got a question. So we've already approved conditional use for this particular property, right? For
Yes,
some limited vehicle sales.
yes.
And at the time, there was a barber shop and a restaurant there also.
Mhm.
And this is gonna eliminate those in favor of more vehicle sales. Are there vehicle sales happening there now?
Yes, I believe so.
They have finished whatever they were gonna do and now they're just looking to expand?
Yes, yes.
And you've had no feedback from the community?
No.
You have any other questions from the DAP?
I should mention that this goes to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission on Thursday, so you guys are the first governing body to vote on this matter.
Great.
With that, we can bring it out to the public. Is the agent or applicant in attendance tonight? Or virtually? No, with that, we can open it up to the public for comment or questions. Is anybody here to speak on this agenda item? No? All right, we'll bring it back to the DAP for question, comments, or motion.
I'm so moved that we approve it as written.
Do we have a second? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That, it looks like it passes 6-0.
6-0. Yeah.
All right, Christina, it looks like we have you here for a
Five
few more
more
cases.
Yep.
District 6 has been popular with planning
Yes.
recently. And there you go, conditional use 2023-0039.
All right. This is a conditional use to allow an accessory apartment on a property zoned SF5, single family residential district. This is located at 2642 North Edwards Street. And the site is currently developed with a 936 square foot single family home, a detached 1-car garage, and a detached 2-car garage. So the applicant is requesting to convert the 1-car detached garage into an accessory apartment. Accessory apartments are also subject to their own supplementary use regulations, which are listed here in the staff report. Anna, could we go to the site photos, please? There we go. So if we look at, the picture on the right is the main structure, and the picture on the left is the accessory apartment. So it's in staff's opinion that the proposed accessory apartment is compatible with the main dwelling unit as is required by the supplementary use regulation. And it's also in character with the neighborhood. The character of the neighborhood is low density residential. Properties to the north, south, east, and west are all zoned SF5 single family residential and developed with single family dwellings. The site already has access to all municipal services such as sewer and water. The proposed use is in conformance with the community investments plan because it identifies the site on the future growth concept map as residential. It's also in conformance with the Wichita Places for People plan. Accessory apartments, they promote small scale infill and will contribute to the improvement of the area. When we look at some of the strategies that I mentioned in the last report, so this one aligns with strategy 5 by supporting a development of variety of lot sizes and housing types. And it aligns with strategy 6, encourage infill and redevelopment that is contextual to the environment in which it is occurring. The proposed accessory apartment will utilize an existing accessory structure. Based upon the information available prior to public hearings, planning staff recommend that the request be approved, subject to the conditions that are listed in your report. This recommendation is based on the golden rule that I mentioned earlier. And I will skip ahead to the last golden rule that at the time the staff report was prepared, staff did not receive any public comment on the requested conditional use. And we have the applicant here today. She'll be able to answer any questions that I may not be able to answer. And this goes to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission this Thursday. So you guys again are the first governing body to vote on this.
You're on a roll.
So my question was, the photograph here, the elevation from the front doesn't show that there's like 2 structures that have been added onto the back of that single garage. And I just wonder if permits have been pulled for those structures, if those were, I just wonder if there's one of these situations where it's already been built into an apartment and now they're saying, okay, I want to make it, I want to get officially approved.
My understanding is that it's always been a garage. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a garage. There's 2 structures and sheds in the back of that. Anyone's free to come and look at it and see,
Believe me, I just.
whether
this
it's
is my
an
first
apartment,
thought.
but no, it's not an apartment yet. It is a garage and it's being turned into a mother-in-law house. My mother-in-law is aging and she needs us to help her, but she wants still some independence of her own to be able to come and go without bothering us.
I want you to talk to my kids.
So that's the purpose of that.
Oh, good, thanks for showing up, yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the DAB?
I move that we, whoa. Oh, yeah, yeah.
With that, we can bring
Wait,
it
wait.
back if the applicant wants to say a few words or answer questions.
Just any questions anyone has.
Okay.
You answered it.
Members of the public, do we have any questions or comments with regards to this agenda item? No, with that, we can bring it back to the DAB for more questions, comments, or motion.
Let's see, I guess I'll make the move. As written.
Oh, was that Mark? Did you second that? Okay. All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, looks like it passes 6-0.
Yeah.
Next item. Item number 10, this is PUD 2023-0008.
We're on a roll here. I'm excited. Yes. So for PUD 2023-0008, the applicant, who is Perfection Signature Properties LLC, and I believe the agent is with us today to answer any questions that I may not be able to answer. They're requesting an amendment to planned unit development number 95, which is the courtyard at the Moore. So a planned unit development is essentially a custom development in which you can establish your own setbacks, use regulations, etc. So for this particular case, they're looking to add 1 parcel of land to reflect the platted boundary that was already approved. So this parcel that you see outlined in black here is 0.23 acres in size, and it's located north of West 42nd Street North and west of North Meridian Avenue. So the PUD in total would increase from 61.46 acres to 61.69 acres. So I know it seems very minor, but if you add land or you subtract land from a PUD, that has to go through the public hearing process. So the subject site will be added to the PUD's only parcel as another residential lot for a total of 172 residential lots. It will adhere to the same 17-foot front setback and 12-foot rear setback as the adjacent residential lots. So in 2022, this PUD was established from portions of other parts of land that are from other community unit plans. Main access to the land for the new PUD will be from North Meridian Avenue, which is a paved 5-lane arterial with sidewalks on both sides. They're going to be creating more streets from North Meridian Avenue, but they haven't been constructed yet. Wichita Transit does not serve this site. It's in conformance with the community investments plan, because if we look at the future growth concept map, it identifies the subject site as appropriate for a new residential development. Based upon the information available at the time of the public hearing, staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions that are listed in your staff report. And this recommendation is based on the golden rules. And then at the time the staff report was prepared, and this, as of today, staff received one phone call just with general concerns about development in the area. It wasn't in relation to this specific parcel of land being added to the PUD. And with that, I will stand for questions. Yes.
The developer is here.
Agent.
I'm sorry, excuse me,
You're fine.
Mr. Agent Man. Out of curiosity, why wasn't that parcel included in the original PUD?
Well, we would have loved to have it if it had been. I'm Jason Nish, MKC representative for the applicant. So originally that building housed some equipment for the moorings HOA. And they were trying to purchase that, but the HOA couldn't find a place to go put their equipment, and so it just took a year. So we're here to spend a little bit of your time and ask if you would.
That answers my question.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Does the DAP have additional questions or comments? Does the agent want to add any more comments?
Unless there's any questions.
We can open that, we can open this case up to the public if there's members of the public who are here to speak on behalf, not on behalf on this agenda item, they can do so at this time. Yeah, with that, we can bring it back to the DAP for questions, comments, or a motion.
I make a motion to approve the change.
I'm second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes 6-0, and we can move on to item number 11. Zone 2023-00045.
All right. So for this particular case, the applicant is requesting a zone change from SF5 single-family residential to MF18 multifamily residential for multifamily development. The subject site is 3-4 acres in size and is generally located on the east side of North Florence Avenue. This parcel is currently undeveloped. So if we look at the site plan that they provided, there we go. They initially wanted to develop this with 2 triplexes or a total of 6 dwelling units on site. However, we looked at the maximum permitted density, which is 5.99. So they are only intending to build 5 units on this site. And then this is also because the site plan doesn't include landscaping or screening. We figured that 5 units is more appropriate for this development. The applicant will be required to submit a landscape plan prior to the issuance of building permits. Because the property abuts single-family residential zoning on the north and south property lines, the applicant is required to plant 1 shade tree or 2 ornamental trees per 40 lineal feet of property for the Wichita landscape ordinance. Additional changes to the site may be required because the required landscape buffer on the north property line will reduce the space available for the driveway, which is proposed to be 20 feet wide. The compatibility height standards that are in the Unified Zoning Code, they limit the proposed development to 35 feet. The character of the neighborhood is residential with commercial uses on the nearby arterial streets. Properties to the north and south are zoned SF5 single family and developed with single family dwellings. property to the east is zoned GC General Commercial and is a vacant lot. Properties to the west are zoned TF3 two-family residential district and GC General Commercial District and are developed with duplexes and an HVAC business respectively. There are no zoning cases associated with this property. The site has access to North Florence Avenue, which is a paved two-way local street with no sidewalks. Municipal services such as sewer and water will need to be extended to accommodate the proposed development. And I actually spoke with Sean Melias, who is the chief design engineer for the city of Wichita, and he requested to see a utility plan for the development, just because we're seeing an increase in density on this site. If we look at the community investments plan, the requested zone changes in conformance. If we look at the 2035 Wichita Future Growth Concept Map, it identified the site as appropriate for residential development and use. So adding triplex developments residences to the neighborhood would increase the diversity of residences and densities in the area, adhering to the component of this plan. The plan recommends infill development occur when the scale and intensity is compatible with the existing uses. The proposed MF18 zoning and triplex development are of a scale and intensity compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Subject property is adjacent to duplex development to the west. Thus, the requested zone change is consistent with the development in the area. The requested zone change is also in conformance with the Wichita Places for People plan. So small scale infill development, like the requested use, can be supported by the current market of the area and build market support for larger development projects in the future. Based upon the information available prior to the public hearing, planning staff recommends that the request be approved. This recommendation is based on the golden rules. And as of today, we still have not received any comments from the public on this matter. This did go to the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission on August 24th. And what they voted on is to approve subject to a protective overlay. And that protective overlay actually requires screening on the east of the property line. Because if you look at the picture sheet on the first page of this report, there's a little street, it says North Colorado Street, and we were looking into this. We did a lot of research on this. So it's not a platted street, but it's still like a dirt road that goes into the house that is right below this one. But again, it's not platted, so what we're recommending is that we have screening on the south and east side, so that way we don't have people cutting through his property to get into that property. Although the applicant told me that the property that is just south here on Colorado Street is abandoned, so I don't know if that'll make a difference. So with that, I will stand for questions, and if not, the applicant is here to answer any questions that I may not be able to answer.
How big are each of the units? How many people can be housed in each of the 5 units? Are these efficiencies or 2-bed, 1, 2 bed?
It's going to be 2-story and 2 bedrooms on the second floor, living room and 2-car garage on the 5th floor.
For each unit?
Yeah.
Oh,
So there was nothing in the protective overlay about design compatibility with the neighborhood? These developments, especially one as compact as this, really concern me with what the design criteria that the developer may come up with or decide to put in. I realize that's a statement, not a question. So let me try that differently. Are we aware of what the design considerations are for this specific site in both the triplex and the duplex construction?
We don't have any design guidelines that are implemented, in terms of the code, but if you guys want to make a motion to amend that protective overlay, we can, or not amend the protective, but create that protective overlay, yes.
Let me explain why I'm concerned. And it's my terms, it's not one the city uses. There seems to be an abundance of multiple housing units popping up in the metro area with what I call an outhouse design. A single sloped roof. And it's not compatible with the neighborhoods. Anyone you talk to that lives in the vicinities of those that are homeowners are less than pleased about it. And that's what I'm concerned about. That's why I'm pinching this and asking the question.
I can maybe add something to this.
But what is your intent for the design, the architecture of the structure?
Well, that idea coming to me from the small measurements that we got, that's narrow, but it's very long. So I was thinking how to make it bigger and comfortable for a family to live there. And the only way that I found is to make it two-story with a garage, two-car garage. And is how I came with my idea, just because it's too narrow.
Let me try my question more directly. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all right. I was just gonna add that this is my neighborhood. I live nearby here, and the neighborhood's already a pretty good mix of different styles of housing and different styles of architecture. I have serious doubt that anything he would build would really stick out that much from what's already in this neighborhood. I also would like to say that I love the fact that these are multifamily housing. Anytime that we can add density and make neighborhoods more walkable is a great thing. So I'm definitely in favor of this.
So my question is because as more of this develops, it will spread throughout other neighborhoods. So my direct question to you, do you expect the roof line on this to be a single pitch or a standard double pitch?
Standard double pitch.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the DAB? This one, we can bring it to the applicant. Do you have additional comments or questions?
I don't.
No, all right. We can open it up for the public, or do we have any members of the public who are here to speak on this agenda item? No, all right. It comes back to the DAB. Questions, comments, or motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Guys, sorry, I guess it might be too late now, but do you guys? want to-
Just to clarify that motion, it's not with the protective overlay.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm gonna retract my vote then.
I think we need
Wait.
clarification on that. Part. And
So the protective overlay requires screening on the east property line.
that's what that does.
There are protective overlays. We're not saying there are none.
Right, but the motion did not specify the protective overlay.
Yes, my motion does not include the protective overlay.
Okay. So, Javen, you made a motion to approve as staff recommended.
Does that include the protective overlay? I mean, if it means approval and everyone's fine with the protective overlay, then I'm fine with doing the protective overlay.
So
Is
staff's-
that the motion, or is that the will of the body? Is we all want the protective overlay?
So staff didn't have a protective overlay, it was MAPC that had the protective overlay.
Okay, then I move to do staff's recommendation with no protective overlay.
All right, do we have a second for the motion per staff's recommendation, not with the protective overlay?
I'm sorry, I have one more question. Was staff's recommendation to approve, but it didn't include.
It didn't include it just because when we wrote the report, we were still trying to figure out Colorado Street and its relation to the property.
So the staff recommendation that we're approved does not include the protective overlay. If we want the protective overlay in it, we should
you should
add
vote on
that
it.
into
Yes.
this. Okay.
The
thank you.
protective overlay meaning the screening. Yes, the one side.
And
That's what we're talking about. Okay.
For clarification, MAPC voted to
Yes.
include the protective overlay.
Oh,
Thank you.
right.
Alright, so our current motion stands approval per staff's recommendation, which does not include the protective overlay. Do we have a second? We don't
I'm
have,
trying to get a better sense of what's on the other side of what would be, a fence
Why,
or a
I,
screen.
I believe if I am correct on that, the other side of that screen is a plot that's facing West Street, correct? It's commercial, or what is it zoned as?
hold on, I can pull up the map. Just a second. If I can find my mouse on here.
Who would the screening be for?
I think
So
the
this-
screening would be a hypothetical if somebody moved into the abandoned house and used that, what is like a dirt road / looks like alleyway to prevent people from, I guess, entering that way. I don't know. I don't like to deal in hypotheticals, so that's why I made the motion to go with the staff recommendation with no protective overlay, because I don't necessarily think that's a big deal.
so I
It's your
guess
neighborhood.
I have a question. Since MAPC did approve it with the overlay, if we were to approve it without the overlay, it would have to go to council because those are different, right?
It goes to council regardless, but it would go as a non-consent item.
Okay, so then can we entertain a different motion?
At this point, we did not have a second, so that motion fails. So we bring it back to the DAP for another motion.
I would make a motion to approve it with the conditions that MAPC put on it, that there be screening on that east side.
I will second that.
Let me make some notes here. And then we have Mark. Who made a motion, second by Lisa. To approve MAPC's recommendation with protective overlay. Do we have? Yep, we have a motion, we have a second. Anybody voting to approve this motion can vote now.
Aye.
All in favor, aye.
And James.
David, what is your vote on the second motion?
I voted aye.
Okay, so it looks like it's approved, 6-0. With that, we can go ahead and move on to agenda item number 12. That's zoning 2023-00046.
Thank you.
Fair break for the last one.
Give her a break. Okay.
That's okay, you guys have zero next one.
Where's, oh, really? We're special today. We get two planners,
First one is, yeah, 673.
you know.
Okay, zone 2346 is a requested rezone. A property located on the southwest corner of North Seneca and West 53rd. They're requesting two zoning classifications that you can see on the screen. The very hard corner, they're looking to go from SF5 to limited commercial. And then below that, they're looking to go from SF5 to two-family residential. Obviously with LC, they were looking for general commercial development, not general commercial. Commercial development in general, I should say. It is limited commercial zoning. There was not necessarily an intended use that they were looking to do, just what would be allowed in limited commercial. For context, the property to the north, the corners, all other three corners have limited commercial zoning straight up. So it is not out of character to have the corners being zoned limited commercial. There's no protective overlays, there's no use restrictions on those other three corners. So they can do anything that's allowed in limited commercial as it is now. And so he's looking to match that with his corner property. Obviously below that, two-family residential would allow development of duplexes as opposed to just single-family homes. What is interesting about this site is it has availability of municipal water. But in this area, if you're familiar with this part of the city, there's just vast areas that was never provided with municipal sewer services. Likely a remnant of probably an annexation of county properties they extended further, there was probably on-site sewer with all the properties at some time, and the city has never gone through and provided, municipal sewer. Access to municipal sewer is not a requirement for development. And that being said, they have to develop two various standards based on the capacity of the on-site sewer they can provide. And so when we look at the commercial development, they're going to be very limited, because obviously if you think about a commercial property and you're looking at however many people are going to be coming in your doors, you have to be able to have the capacity to process the on-site sewer that is generated on that site. So it starts limiting what you're able to do. And the same goes for the other 3 or 4 properties surrounding. All those limited commercial properties don't have municipal sewers either. And so you have commercial zoning, but you're vastly limited on the capacity or the extent and intensity of your commercial zoning, simply because you have to process the sewer on site. So that was a topic of conversation at MAPC, and a point of clarification to say, yes, it is commercial zoning, but it will be almost self-limiting to some degree because of the on-site
So they're
sewer.
not going to access city water.
No, they have city water access. They just don't have
Access, but they're not going to use it.
city, well, they're gonna use city water. They just have no access to city sewer. There's no sewer lines for like a half a mile.
City
or
water,
far.
but septic.
Yeah, so they're on-site sewer, so a septic system, yes. Same thing goes with the 2 families. Given the area that's being zoned TF3, if they were a typical area, they could put more duplexes in there. With development standards for providing on-site sewer, they're limited to 3 duplexes over the entire area. That is going TF3, because they need I believe it's a 10,000 square foot area per duplex. In order to provide sufficient space for the on-site sewer that would have to be installed to accommodate the sewer generated by those dwelling units. And so they have a larger square footage area for their lot. Than the standard 6,000 square feet. So it actually limits the number of duplexes they can put on that portion of the lot. The limited commercial property has to follow the standard screening and landscaping. It abuts what will be residential zoning, even though they're owned by the same person, the TF3 to the south and the single family to the west. So they've provided the screening fence and the landscape buffer, as well as a landscape street yard on 53rd, because it's an arterial. Seneca Street at this location is considered a local street and not an arterial as it is in other parts of the city. So the only landscaping along the street has to be along 53rd, according to. And that's because this property right here is zoned commercially right next to where they're zoning commercially. So when you're on a local street and you're across the street from commercial zoning, you don't need to provide, landscaping along the street. Had that been residential, they would have. Compatibility, height and setback standards apply for the commercial zoning, so their height is 35 feet. They have setbacks that they have to abide by from the south and the west property lines, or what will be the south property line. Obviously, they're going to be splitting this up into more than just the 2 lots that are there. The comprehensive plan identifies the area as appropriate for commercial. This allows for commercial uses as well as residential, depending on market factors. So we find this in conformance with the comprehensive plan. Again, based on context with the other 3 corners, zoned commercially, zoning this commercially is not out of context. You've got kind of a vehicle repair shop on the east side, and some other commercial uses on the north side. The residential development is not necessarily out of character with the way the comprehensive plan identifies it. Obviously, it's fairly contiguous to SF5, but again, they're limited to the number of duplexes they can. And as you can see, it's kind of on an outer edge of what is a single family development to the west. The property directly west of the TF3 is actually owned by the city of Wichita and is part of the greater extension of the park that is west of Sullivan. I don't remember the name of the park off the top of my head. You see it's in the report here. But on the aerial map, you can see there's the Ball Diamond, that's kind of the official park. But as you go west, the city of Wichita owns that property. And it is basically treated and considered part of the broader park property. So they're not abutting residential, single family residential with a TF3. It kind of becomes its own island. And the property across the street from the TF3 looks to be a place of worship of some kind with, you know, the gabled roof and the parking lot. We have heard some public opposition on this, and there were protest petitions filed. Did you get the information what the percentage was?
No, I didn't get that percentage.
It wasn't I don't believe they got to the 20% threshold, but several protest petitions were filed.
20% of what?
The land area within the protest. So it's calculated by land area, not by number of property owners.
Okay.
But either way, public opposition, official valid protests have been filed. Planning Commission recommended approval of this 11-0 on August 24th, and it will be scheduled for city council here in the near future, now that we're going to that and getting your guys' recommendation as well. Simply based on the fact that it has a protest, regardless of your guys' recommendation tonight, it will be a non-consent item for consideration at Planning Commission when it does go there. And with that, I can stand for any questions. You might have.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
The protests from residents, was it due to the commercial zoning or due to the multifamily change, which, or all of the above?
Well, a protest, when it's filed, doesn't have to give a reason. It's simply just protesting the application. When there was public comment, my understanding was that it's in general of just the development in general. The requested zone changes that are being talked about. So.
Oh, it's not specific to like it being commercial or being multi, it just that they don't want development at all.
Yeah, when somebody submits protests, they don't have to provide a validating reason. They can just submit a protest with their property information to say that they are against the application.
Okay, thank you.
So, well, is there any screening requirement, for example, on the west side where that residential property is adjacent to the TF?
Not for TF3, there's no screening requirement between single family and two family zonings. The screening is required along the west property line of the limited commercial. If it goes to limited commercial, they would have to provide a screening fence on the west and what would become the south property line. And on both of those property lines is required a landscape buffer, which is a minimum of 1 shade tree per 40 linear feet for the landscape ordinance. So both a screening fence and landscaping requirements.
Thank you.
So the request to have unspecified commercial development is just to leave options open?
Yep, and I think, again, based on context, the other 3 corners have limited commercial without any use restrictions. So there's
Okay.
no protective overlays on them, not restricted zoning back to only allow.
So that's
certain uses.
characteristic of the
So
neighborhood.
of this, this is the only corner of the 4 that doesn't have limited commercial. So whatever people can do on the other 3 corners, they can just do that by right now, within the limitations, of course, of they have on-site people and all those things. So all things fair, I think the understanding is they would like the opportunity for limited commercial development because the other 3 corners have the same opportunity.
You said just to the west of this is the park.
Yes, so this is kind of like the officially named park, and I believe a portion of this property is considered part of the park. And then there's a delineation, but the city of Wichita owns all of this land. And there's like basketball courts, there's the ball fields over here, this is just open soccer fields.
And there's no screening requirement between that property and the park.
No, and because that's completely based on zoning, and the zoning code does not require it. The zoning code treats TF3 and SF5 as compatible zoning classifications.
And are those separated? That would be the limited commercial?
Yeah,
That
where you
specific
see,
piece.
where you see that line, that's where the delineation would be.
Okay.
There would be a screening fence there, and then a screening fence on the west side of just the limited commercial portion.
Oh, okay.
All right, with that, we can bring it to the
So-
applicant, agent, if they have any questions, comments. Yeah.
Good evening, Phil Meyer with Boston Company. I think Philip did a great job of presenting that to you. So my only comment I want to add is we understand the limitation on sewer. And when we develop the commercial, which I think the contract purchaser is just what's going to do a little construction yard for one of his businesses there. Putting a building up, but it's going to have a restroom, it's going to have a sink. We know we can't do restaurants. We know we can't do activities like that. The other comment that he mentioned to me, and we were at planning commission, we do plan to fence the west property line. I'm not gonna say screen and maybe chain link. We do plan to fence it. But he did his research before he even came to see me about sewer requirements with MABCD. We know we can only do 3 duplexes. I'm gonna tell you the sewer system's 3 times the size of the houses that are gonna be built. So there's gonna be a lot of open space with each one of these 3 lots, and we're fully aware of that. So with that, I'll answer questions you may have or come back and answer them after you hear from neighbors if you'd like.
So you heard my question earlier about design compatibility.
Yes.
What do you anticipate is going to go up here as far as roof line?
I think it's gonna be more of what you're normally, it's not going to be the single pitch 2-story duplex. Okay, it's going to be the standard. I think they're 1-story, but I can't promise you that, but it's gonna be more of a residential character that you're used to seeing.
Okay.
Thank you.
For the record, I like single pitch roofs.
Thank you, David. We got that.
You're welcome, Anna.
All right, do we have any members of the public who are here to speak on this agenda item? All right, we have.
Hi, I'm
If you want to go ahead and come up here to the podium.
okay right here. Thank
Okay,
you.
state your name and address for the record.
I'm John Sullivan. I live at 5240 North Sullivan Road, just southwest of the lot for the proposed zoning. And I think this rezoning is actually a violation of the old rule number 1. I think it's out of characteristic of the neighborhood. If you look at the map, it's a lot of single-family homes over smaller acreages, acre lots, 2-acre lots, and so on. And all of a sudden, we're going to stick 6 families all into a lot of less than 2 acres. Yeah, 3 duplexes, 6 families. So you're more than doubling the population density of this area immediately. And as you heard the applicant state, they looked into it and they said, oh, well, we can get 3 duplexes because that's what the sewer can, handle. But, or the septic system can handle. But if they could put more, they would have put more. So they're not really considering the neighborhood. And I don't think they really care. So I'm definitely opposed to this. And there have been a number of people who have spoken out at the MAPC meeting. Mamita introduced, she stated that 2 people emailed and 1 person called, and I called them myself. And still, we were voted 11-0 against us. So I'm a little disappointed in that. And so I'm just stating my opposition to this here.
Because your concern was.
Population density and the characteristic of the neighborhood, not the roof height. That's a violation of golden rule number 1, which says the zoning uses and character of the neighborhood. So that block right there is all single family properties. Properties to the south of it, all single family. Most of the properties to the east of it, all single family. There's no duplexes there. There's no 2-family lots anywhere in this area. There's a couple limited commercial, but that's it.
It's tough because we're always worrying about a housing shortage and enough places for people to
It's
live.
zoned as a single family unit. If they want houses, they can build single family houses. If you're worried about.
It doesn't help.
It
as
does.
much,
It's-
right?
It
As
does.
having a unit that houses more than just 1 family. That's all I'm pointing out, is that we're
Okay.
concerned that there is enough housing.
You can have the
in
opportunity
our
to build
district.
2 single family homes.
That's not the same.
The one advantage here is that they'll have direct access to 53rd Street. So it's not like you're creating a neighborhood with an excess of vehicles or
I agree with Tom and Lisa. I don't see how population density in this neighborhood would be affected or extra traffic. I don't think there would really be a noticeable change.
Thank you. Do we have additional members of the public who are here to speak on this item?
I do.
Okay.
Can you look at your little map here? So this property right here is mine. And that business across the street that they're calling a vehicle service, I fix lawnmowers. And the lawnmower repair shop, it's open from 8 to 5 Monday through Friday.
Great.
Okay, this property right here, there's a house here, there's a house here. And he's putting 2 businesses in there, which is just click through somehow. All of these properties are on one septic system. Okay, at my shop, there's me and another guy and 1 toilet. Okay, right here is a garage. It might be a commercial property, but it's a garage. There's no toilet, no septic, no nothing. You go back to 60s, 70s, 80s. A single family home required a half-acre lot.
Yeah.
Put in a septic system. So now we're gonna have 6 families. Septic system overflowing into my yard. Because it won't handle it. There's no way in hell it's gonna handle it. I don't care what they say. And they changed that rule from a half-acre lot to an acre lot per family. So I don't know how they're even considering that for them homes. And then I obviously don't want a commercial property right next to my house. He can put up a chain link fence or whatever he wants. That's all I gotta say about it.
What's your name, sir, for the record?
James White.
We have additional members of the public who are here to speak on this agenda item. So we have 2.
Yeah, I'm David Wall. I'm 5431 North Seneca, and I'm actually 2 properties north of the lawnmower shop. And I just want to address the other 2 corners as being businesses. They may be zoned again for business use, but the garage on the northeast side there has been there ever since I bought my house about 5 years ago. The weeds and the crap that just grew up around that are enormous. I pull up to that intersection to try to turn out on the 53rd. I can't even see the traffic coming at me. You know, about every 2 to 3 months, they come down and get on them and they come weed eat it. I think it's been done twice this year. The other one on the southeast side, the majority of time since I've lived there, it's been just almost demolished. I mean, there's been dumpsters out there, all the windows have been broken out, trash. You know, I go over there personally. I went into both those properties and moved trash. Spent an entire day picking up trash and crap and putting in bags and hauling off to the dumpsters myself.
Yeah.
Because nobody takes care of that crap. And I don't want to see another limited commercial business in there.
But there isn't one now.
Right,
And so
but that's
we're
just
having
another
this
property
structure.
for me to take care of it. They just let some bum in there. You know, I don't know who owns them or what they do on those others, but. You know,
Well, I actually think that having development would solve the issue of having
That's what I was
overgrown grass in an empty lot that's not being taken care of.
It's
I
gonna
think
be
if you have
They're both
housing development there, it would actually have people keep up. And if they don't keep up, it would give us the city an opportunity to fine and enforce those restrictions on that overgrown, grass and whatnot. So I actually think this
drive
would
all the way
solve
north
your
of
issues.
and you don't enforce any zoning laws or any, keep it clean rules all the way up that street. The traffic coming up there and the number of accidents in that intersection is just unbelievable.
But that's what he was saying. It seems like it would be better if there's a new.
If there's more traffic, how's it
There.
gonna be better?
I mean,
then
if
you-
this is a triplex here, the amount of cars that's going to be added to the street is going to be very minimal.
Here on the southeast corner, he's come in and redid it all, and I haven't seen anything change. Nobody's in there.
We're not talking about the other corners, we're talking about
providing a place for people to live.
Is the citizen going to be allowed to speak without interruption?
Yeah. You guys are gonna pass it, it sounds like anyway. That limited commercial is not gonna provide any housing, and it can be just another little dumpy business.
Same with the duplexes.
I have a question. I have a question for city staff.
All right. So at this point, sir, if you've had your allotted time to speak, sir, do you have any other comments?
No, I mean, like I said, there's no reporting on number of traffic accidents, and I think depending on the business, you can't say it won't increase traffic. But
It's limited.
again, it's just constant.
Go ahead, Bill.
I do have one question that has surfaced as I've sorted out the discussions. Philip, if I could address this to you. You know, I know you guys, somebody probably did permeability tests on the land up there before they decided the septic system was gonna be.
I don't think they did.
Excuse me.
Okay, so to keep the quorum, you guys, if you've had your time to speak, unless you're asked the question, you're not allowed to speak on this item.
So with those permeability tests, did those provide a result that indicated that septic system would be viable for 3 duplex units?
I don't necessarily know the answer of if permeability tests were done, but if not, in order to get building permits for the number of dwelling units, that stuff would have to.
They'll have to.
During the permitting process, they will have to go through the steps of providing adequate on-site sewer. And if it's determined that adequate on-site sewer cannot be provided for 3 duplexes, then they're not going to get 3 duplexes.
So that's built in.
It's
Sewage
passive.
protection.
What we're talking about, is this an appropriate land use? Is a duplex or multiple duplexes appropriate? There's a layer underneath that if it's determined as an appropriate land use, then they go to the next step through permitting for the commercial development or the residential development on, is there adequate soil permeability? Can they actually have a septic system without it overflowing into a neighbor's property? That's during the permitting process. That's the other level underneath zoning that happens after land use is determined viable. Same thing would have to happen if they wanted to build a single family home. They would have to determine adequate sewer can be provided on site, and if it can't, then you're not going to get a building permit.
Okay, great.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I just had one other quick question. Prior use of the land. Trying to remember, it's been a long time.
We believe it used to be a school.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It was originally a school on that corner. And at one point, there was I believe, stoplight, flashing light at that intersection. Okay, all right.
What's happening, I believe we have another gentleman who is here to speak on this agenda item, sir.
So my name is Chris Labra. This gentleman kind of said what I was gonna say. I live at 5260 North Seneca. Catty corner right here. I see every accident that happens at that intersection, 53rd and Seneca. There's a lot of streets off of 53rd that come into this neighborhood, but you don't ever see accidents there. So now we're gonna bring more people in here. We need a stoplight at that intersection. Turning lanes on both sides of the street, turning lanes. I know it might pass. Can you put up an 8-foot fence right there? Wood fence? I'm just asking. He's already talked about putting a fence on this side, but nothing here.
Now you're gonna put a chain link fence up.
Well, I'm just asking.
It's not required by the zoning code.
Thank you.
So, but the stoplight,
Yes,
I
the
noted
stoplight.
that, that's a
I
separate
see
issue
them
from this,
all
but
the
that's
time.
something we're
Accidents, yes,
lobbying for.
all the time.
Yeah,
Both intersections on Seneca Street on both sides of 53rd need to be widened.
yeah, and so yeah, definitely, your neighborhood should get together and make sure that that's known at City Hall. That you need a stoplight there.
Thank you, sir. Do we have additional members of the public here to speak on this item, or anybody who's joined us virtually?
I got a question, like to ask. My name is Curtis Krager. Where does all the stormwater go? Once they get everything built here, I mean, where does the stormwater go to?
So again, with building permit process, they do a stormwater analysis and determine that it will be handled within the broader city system.
I own the property on North Sullivan, which is just south of the baseball field. And there's a drainage ditch there. 3 years ago, I got a letter from the city saying they were wanting to come and clean that drainage ditch out. And it said, call this guy for information. And when I called the guy on the letter, he knew nothing about it, and they've never said anything about it. But that drainage ditch doesn't drain. Because I just think that's just gonna be a lot more of a flood, because it just sits there and pools up water. And that water never gets to the river unless it heavy rain where it floods the whole back area there. So if it goes that way, I mean, it needs to all be cleaned out and fixed, but there's not good drainage there.
I'm just curious, I'm not sure how that is connected to.
There would be
This
some
property.
level of additional impervious surface. So, right now it's all grass and you'd be having a roof which would drain and you have driveway. And some of the stormwater can be handled on site where, your downspouts go into your yard and it'll permeate through the soil. But the driveway and some will drain into the street, and depending on the drainage patterns, I think is this concern of if the natural drainage pattern were to then go down 52nd Street. I just don't know that information, but during the building permit process, they also look at stormwater drainage.
Do we have anybody else here to speak on this agenda item? All right, we have one.
I'm Curtis Krager's neighbor. I live under one of those thumbnails down there, kind of right to the south of the ballpark area. I believe that whole area was already zoned like for educational purposes. Has it ever been zoned for commercial or residential?
Is currently zoned single family,
Single
which
family?
allows schools.
Okay,
So
so
we don't
that,
have an education zoning. Schools are allowed in most zoning classifications,
but that's the only thing that's ever been on that piece of property.
to my
is the school.
understanding.
I believe that land was deeded to the school system from A.A. Hyde in the late 1800s.
The school
And that
system-
school was still there when I moved in. And then they had to demo it, right? And that demolition happened
I'm not aware when all of that happens.
maybe 15 years ago. Anyone know?
10-ish.
But that's always been a school and a park area right there. You guys from the Riverside area get the benefit of a lot of park area. Different areas of Riverside. On this end of town, there aren't any. I mean, there's that ballpark and that soccer field. And I believe there's Heller's Park that's over by Earhart. That's pretty much it for park area from public. City of Wichita. I think I'm correct. Does that sound right? Anyone know? My fear is that we're gonna eliminate some park area that a lot of people get to enjoy. There's always people playing with their dogs, throwing frisbees around, playing ball and stuff on that empty lot, whether it actually belongs to the city or not. It belongs to a private individual. Everyone benefits from that park area. That's gonna be eliminated, once they build multifamily homes on it. And I think it might be kind of disruptive to the park area right adjacent to it also. Just because. I'd second also what a lot of people have already said, that there's a traffic problem on 53rd Street. It's intensified since they built like a Walmart and a O'Reilly's and all kinds of things right to the west of Meridian Street. That street got a lot busier and there's a lot of accidents there. So the traffic load from that new development, and you're talking about putting in 6 more families in the light commercial area, you're gonna add more traffic load to Seneca Street. So I think it could be worse. The other thing that I don't know much about it, and I'd like to ask, maybe you would know, was there mention of like outdoor storage for construction equipment or construction material in the original description?
If you guys ask me, I can answer that. Yeah.
Was there a
Is there like
desire for?
outdoor
whatever
storage
it is?
for construction material? Can you clarify what that is?
I guess first, some of the things I'll point out, school district sold that ground. So that ground is owned by a private individual now, because 259 did sell it. And that's your applicant tonight, not the contract purchaser, but your applicant since they own the ground. So at planning commission, we mentioned we would use the limited commercial, the contract purchasers. Idea is he's gonna put one of his smaller construction companies there. So we're gonna do a 3, 4, 5,000 square foot building, whatever we can fit on there based on sewer. And most of the material is gonna be stored inside. I was asked by a planning commissioner, can you store material outside? There's a limited amount of material, like 5% or something, that you're allowed to store outside, which we could do. I don't know what we're going to do, but most of it's gonna have to be put in the building based on the zoning district. If it was general commercial, we could store outside. Limited commercial, we cannot. You can, if you want to correct any of that,
And any
you
outdoor
can.
storage like he's talking about would have to be screened. So it's not like it can just be put in the parking lot, like it would be behind and have to be screened from ground view.
I have a question for city staff.
Go ahead, David.
What is the process to have a traffic study done on that intersection? Because it sounds like a common thread is that there is significant traffic and not adequate traffic control. Now, that being said, I don't think that this project is necessarily going to contribute heavily to that. But if there's already heavy traffic there, what can the citizens and residents in this area do to start the process to have that looked at?
I would have them reach out to their council member so she can talk with Mike Armour, who's a city engineer, and they, can put down the rubber hoses, which do traffic counts, and they can get, police data regarding, number of accidents, things like that, to determine at what point is it at the point of meriting a traffic signal or something like that. So I would cycle through the council member, might carry a little bit more weight, especially if there's a number of residents who contact Councilmember Ballard with their concerns, continue to contact so that it is constantly brought up to the attention, because probably the number of intersections in Wichita that are constantly contacted over, like you need your in to say, this is a needed area, Wichita is a very big city. So work through Councilmember Ballard. She can work with traffic engineering to see if they can get some traffic counts and some accident counts to determine if by their merits, a traffic signal is needed.
Yeah, I would strongly.
Perfect, thank
encourage
you.
investment.
And since she wasn't able to be here today, tomorrow morning, I will pass along that information and she'll go ahead and get with engineering to have them take a look at that.
I was going to say, I will personally follow up with Councilmember Ballard about it because, if that is a traffic issue, I understand. I think that the fear that this is going to add significant traffic is maybe overblown. But if there's already traffic problems there, then that needs to be looked at and examined and studied and, to see if there's any type of ways that you can better control that. So.
Do we have additional members from the public here to speak on this agenda item? Do we have anybody virtually on Zoom? All right, with that, I bring it back to the DAP for questions, comments, or a motion.
Go ahead.
I have a comment before you make a motion. The issues that you guys spoke about for debris and trash and stuff like that. I know from personal experience in our neighborhood, and I know it's a pass off, but using wichita.gov and reporting issues drop-down menu on that site has been very effective for our neighborhood in getting nuisance issues like that addressed. So just for reference. Okay.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second.
And David, you're approving, your motion is to approve based on staff recommendation, correct?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Do I have a second?
Is that what the planning commission voted on?
Yeah, there was no there was no different type of recommendation or
Okay.
different conditions or protective overlay. There's
Perfect.
a unique thing about this one.
Can I
Okay.
add a quick comment? I just wanted to say that I feel like what's built into the construction process answers a lot of the concerns, especially about septic, right?
Can I ask a question?
So,
Can I ask a question? Okay, the property right next door where there's two houses and two businesses they're putting in there. Nobody ever came out and checked anything on the sewage there. The guy just bought the place and started building it. And it collapsed. The end of the building collapsed.
he could have been doing something unpermitted and just.
He was, but he still, he was doing it unpermitted, but it is still happening.
I am going to bring this back to the DAB. We currently have a motion on the table. Did we get a second? Lisa, you have a second? Anybody in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Anybody against this motion? 2, 6-2, motion passes.
Stop on the way.
4-2, I'm sorry, yes. The motion passes 4-2. On to agenda item number 13, zoning 2023-0047.
Wait for that building or for the room too.
I don't think there's anywhere enough land there for the sewer to be adequate to agree.
It's great place, but I had so many questions about the urgency. We get so many people sleeping in our trash bin area and interested in people sitting outside, rocking and shouting.
Hey, Anna, can I get clarification on which zoning case is next? I'm sorry.
Seems that there's one of those.
She's tied up right now. She'll get with you in a minute.
Oh, sure.
Back. All right, so we have the last zoning case here. This is zone 2023-00047. The applicant is requesting a zone change from, so the property is interesting. It's actually zone SF5 and TF3. And they're doing a zone change to GC General Commercial District. It's a little bit over half an acre in size and it's located at 721 North Hoover Avenue. The subject site is currently developed with a vacant residential dwelling. I will point out this is very close to the first case that we present, or the first case we presented on, because it is actually the same applicant. So the applicant is making the zone change request for the expansion of existing automotive repair, body shop facility, and roofing services. The applicant also owns 2 properties directly south of the subject site, which are on and adjacent to the northwest corner of North Hoover Avenue and West Central Avenue. They are developed with a roofing company and an automotive repair and sales facility. So I'll have Anna pull up the site plan in just a moment here, but so the applicant plans to construct 2 new buildings on the property. And the existing approach on the southern end of the subject site will be removed and replaced with another approach in the middle of the subject site. Do you want me to?
Don't come in there beating. Not if you'll get caught.
Yeah, I know, that's why I'm hurrying.
So there we go. Yep. So there's currently an existing approach, as I mentioned, on the southern end of the subject site. And they're looking to remove that and replace it with the approach that you see in the site plan. So it's right. This would be the new approach. Thank you.
Nice. Nice read.
I gotta work on my jump. So it is staff's opinion that moving the driveway to this location may increase the negative impacts associated with commercial development on the adjacent residential properties. The new drive for the proposed development will be across the street from 2 residential properties. If we look at the character of the neighborhood, it is residential and it has commercial development, but that's on the arterial street. Property to the north is zoned SF5 and developed with a single family dwelling. Property to the south is, as I mentioned, it's owned by the applicant. It's zoned GC General Commercial District, and it has a protective overlay. Developed with a roofing and auto body facility. Property to the east are zoned TF3 two-family and SF5 single-family, and are developed with single-family residences. And then directly west of the subject site is Interstate 235. There are no zoning cases associated with this property. The requested zone change is not in conformance with the community investments plan. If you take a look at the 2035 future growth concept map, it identifies the site as appropriate for residential uses. Commercial development is thus not an appropriate use for the land. The general development pattern of the community investments plan states that major commercial and employment centers should be located at the intersections of arterial streets and along highways and commercial corridors. The requested zone change and proposed use is along a residential street. The land use compatibility guidelines state that higher intensity development should be discouraged from locating in areas of existing lower intensity development, particularly established low density residential areas. The requested zone change is proposing a high intensity development in an established low density residential area. It's also not in conformance with the goals of the Wichita Places for People plan. It's not in conformance with strategy 6, encourage infill and redevelopment that is contextual to the environment in which it is occurring. The context of the environment is mostly residential, and then the higher intensity commercial uses are along the Central Avenue corridor. The proposed use primarily focuses on automobiles and also roofing services, but it does not emphasize walkability in the area. The proposed use continues a disconnected development pattern by promoting commercial development and increased vehicular traffic to encroach in a residential neighborhood. And so for these reasons, we are actually recommending denial for this zone change. However, we do have a proposed protective overlay. Should the DAB find that the requested conditional use be approved, it is recommended that the DAB adopt alternative findings supporting their recommendation. And the conditions of the protective overlay are listed in your staff report. And then if the DAB finds that the vehicle and equipment sales is permitted, that they are subject to supplementary use regulations. So this went to MAPC on August 24th, and it was approved by the MAPC 10-1. And their alternative findings were that it is a mixed use neighborhood, not a residential neighborhood. And it is technically, because it's close to 235, that's considered a major highway, and then Central Avenue is a major corridor. And so they found it to be an appropriate use for the land. I will say that they also modified one of the conditions of approval, the last one, where they, and feel free to correct me on this, but I believe it doesn't have to be 1.5 times the landscape ordinance. They eliminated that condition. Do you recall that?
They did not. It was the width that got changed.
It was just the width. Okay, so instead of a 10-foot wide landscape buffer, they approved a 8-foot wide landscape buffer on the north side.
But still, it's facing on the east side, it's facing residential property.
That's correct. So they're still subject to screening on the east side.
And yeah, and I'll cover the driveway when I get
Yeah.
it. They had a driveway condition added.
Yes, that as well. So with that, I will stand for questions, and if not, Phil can answer any questions that I may not be able to answer.
Does the DAB have any questions or comments?
I have a question on the staff report. It said something about detrimental effect on nearby properties. Can you elaborate on what that means?
So we're concerned that, it may bring, this commercial development may bring light pollution, additional traffic, fumes and odor to a residential neighborhood. Because roofing is considered to be construction, sales and service. If we take a look at what may come in the future, that may also affect those residential properties detrimentally. I'm trying to think of other other examples here. Does that answer your question or do you want me to?
No,
Okay.
I think that answers my question. And, you know, I think I agree with the city or city staff's recommendation for denial on this, just because of, you know, being right across the street from residential. Also, I hate to see multifamily residential being rezoned for other use. So I do think I'm against this.
Additional questions, comments, staff members? Bring it back to the audience. The applicant is here. Agent for the applicant.
Agent for the applicant, that'll work better. Good evening. We save the easiest one for last, right? So I don't know if I could ask, can you, we'll start there. I'm gonna ask you to bounce around a little bit, but we can just start there. So I'm gonna ask you to approve this zone change request tonight. Couple things I want to point out. And I've driven by this property for 30+ years. That old car wash is sitting there, needs to be cleaned up. The duplex unit that is there, if you look at the photos on the last page of your staff report, is not inhabited at the moment. And I'm thinking we're dilapidated. So could it be fixed? Absolutely, it could be fixed, but more than likely it's going to get scraped and started over. And that's the house we're talking about now. So I'm using a little different approach than staff did on this one. And I understand protecting the neighborhood. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the neighborhood. I'm gonna say the city of Wichita is gonna be better off if we clean this property up and get it redeveloped and get the car wash knocked down. I'd have you go to the zoning map for a minute. Yes, I've got residential zoning on the east side. And I don't know this number and I should have looked it up, but I got 10,000-20,000 citizens that drive by the west side of this every day. And to get a nice clean building on there, get that car wash gone, get our landscaping in for code. I think we're gonna serve more citizens by cleaning this property up and redeveloping it. These particular owners were your first case tonight. If you drive along Central, they've done a great job of cleaning up the south side of this building where their facility is located. They haven't got to the back part. The next step we're doing now. They would like to expand the zoning based on the site plan. This I want to point out to you on the west side of I-235, that commercial zoning goes all the way up to Elm Street. So there are precedents being set already in this intersection that commercial zoning of that depth is acceptable. Now I'll just have you keep scrolling down to the site plan for me if you would. There you go. So with this, I'm down one more. I think it was down. I kept playing. There we go. So what we're proposing to do, that new building in the middle, would be their automotive repair stuff. Everything's done inside of the building. That's where the car wash sits now. And the one line that runs through the north third of that is the end of the existing GC zoning. So everything north of that line is what we're asking to rezone. The one thing that Planning Commission asked, so I asked planning to approve this subject to a protective overlay of a bunch of uses I was going to take out versus the number one that the staff had. And they like leaving it number one as the staff had, which I'm okay with. It gives us the 3 uses we asked for. 3 uses match that site plan, so we're good with that. That site plan had an 8-foot landscape buffer on the north property line and an 8-foot landscape buffer on the east property line. That 2 foot is critical. So I asked them to approve it with the 8-foot buffer, and we can still get the landscaping and screening fence along Hoover Street. And we can do one along the north property line. That site plan asked for a permission for us to meet with the owner to the north, and the owner to the north will accept all the trees and landscaping on their lot. We're gonna put it on their lot. And if they don't want it, we're gonna put it on our lot. And so that site plan has that flexibility in it. And I think I'll probably, the driveway. So we centered that driveway that faces the far north building or the new building on the common property line between the two duplex, or between the two homes. And those homes happen to be close together. So the planning commission actually, if you looked at an aerial, there's no home. Once you get, if you move it to the north property line, there's no immediate impact driving in and out of the driveway with the home. So they asked me to move it to the north property line. We're fine with that. If you'd like it moved to the north property line, we'll do that. I believe that was added to the protective overlay from the planning commission. So there's an item 9 now that moved the drive up to the north property line. We're good with that. With that, I'll stop there and answer any questions you may have.
Will those drives and the access area that you have there support the type of vehicles it takes to move damaged or vehicles in need of repair in and out of the property?
Yes, and wish they're gonna have this southern drive that's existing, that vehicle repair is going on in that building to the existing farthest south building right now. So that vehicle repair is happening here. They're going to move that up to here. I think they've had great success with their automotive business that they're doing here. It's part of the reasons. The restaurant wasn't doing as well as they wanted on the other side of the road, so they've been operating here for, I'm not sure how long, but yeah, they've been operating there.
I've been watching the business grow in that corner.
Growing, and they've been growing in the area.
It's fair to say there's no new types of use or types of traffic. Right, it is potentially some more of each one of those.
Yes, the roofing company's office is operating across the street right now, so if they do that, they're gonna just move it across the
But
street.
like tow trucks are already coming in on Uber and if, or whatever, like carrying a vehicle. Roofing. I don't know if that's his name, but roof trucks also, right? That's a technical term, right?
Wouldn't it be, would it be too much to go back and fix this with overlays and resubmit so that it gets that approval in the first place to fit,
So this
with,
does,
places for people and community investments plan, and if you guys look at those and reconfigure what you're asking, would that be?
well, it depends on,
Wouldn't that be a worthy endeavor since?
well, if it got us to the finish line, yes,
Yeah,
it would.
that's what I was saying.
I don't know. It depends on how staff's going to look at it. If you're gonna look at it solely from residential on Hoover, this is an appropriate to encroach into residential neighborhoods. I'm not gonna get there by fixing the site plan. If you're gonna look at it from my stance of, we're backing up to 235, this is the commercial industrial area. And you got a chance to clean up that commercial industrial area, and we're doing the same thing that's on the west side of 235, so there's a precedence. Then the matching the community and people in places plan is, what perspective lens you put on when you look at it.
I have a question for staff. Have we heard any protests from any of the neighbors?
So we have not received any protest petitions. There was one gentleman who commented at the MEPC meeting on August 24th.
What was his comments? Do you recall?
He
I got them
was,
written down. Do you want
yes,
me to take that?
go for it.
I got them written down here.
There you go.
He had 3 comments. Global does a good job of cleaning up their property. He just wanted to compliment them for taking care of the front door along Central. Hoover has too much traffic now. Don't do anything to add more traffic to it. And there's a lot of duplexes being built. He thinks instead of rezoning this to GC, put some more duplexes in.
I think I happen to agree with that comment.
But there's, and I hear you, and I don't disagree. This particular area of town has had a lot and is slowly infilling with a lot of There's a lot of vacant lots and we put a lot of housing in there over the last 15 years.
Which is great.
So did you say you have contacted the neighbor to the north, or you plan to contact the neighbor to the north?
We plan to contact the neighbor to the north, or leaving that option in there on the site plan in case they say, yeah, that's fine. I think they've talked to them before, but not about putting landscaping on the plan. It was a tough one for you guys. This is what you guys get paid the big bucks for.
Yeah, right. Anna, would you, I'm sorry, were you gonna say something?
I just have one quick clarification question. MAPC did approve it. Did they include the protective overlay?
Yes, they did. And so the difference is, instead of a 10-foot wide landscape buffer for provision 8, it's an 8-foot wide landscape buffer. And then you mentioned there was an additional provision in the protective overlay,
Moving the driveway to the north property line.
moving the driveway to the north property line.
So, if you don't mind, could you go back to the color coded zoning lot map?
This one right here?
Yeah, and roll that up just a little bit more. You know, a little, I'm sorry, I guess I meant down. I want to see below central. See I gotta confess to you, I came into this meeting agreeing with staff saying it's an encroachment on a residential area. And then I had to think, wait a minute. And I happened to vote against this, because right after I came on the DAB. DAB approved or voted to approve zoning change to wherever that color is now. GC, LC,
Pink is GC.
on south, yeah, okay, that thing. South of Central to allow heavy equipment storage in there, which is a whole lot worse than what this proposal is for. So I'm really torn on this one.
Yeah, this isn't easy. Last and not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One side of me doesn't want to have anything else flying into a residential area, and the other says, we got a heavy traffic area, and we've already started doing it. The camel's nose is under the tent.
Yeah.
I guess what I would say on that is it has started to encroach south of Central. It hasn't really north of Central. So I think that's where I'm hung up is, if it was going further south, okay, but why start that going north, especially on a plot of land that is ripe for duplexes or something else when we have a housing shortage. So I think that's my thought process on that.
Appreciate your insight.
I still have to ask this question. Are there members of the public who are here to speak on this agenda item?
As you should.
I think most people fade out about it.
No.
You kind of wonder if it's.
With that, I'll take it back to the DAB for questions, comments, or motion.
Somebody tell me what to do.
He's wondering.
We can't
Hold
do
on.
that.
I mean, if that's even the type of property someone would build housing.
Would they?
They haven't yet.
Is it too close to the highway?
I mean, yeah, that's.
Because I prefer it if it was housing, obviously.
Exactly.
Pretty close to the interstate.
But you're right up against the interstate, and so would anybody want, somebody would want. At the right price, everybody's got price.
Are we ready for a motion?
Go for it.
We're looking for somebody to make a
I'll
motion.
make a motion to deny.
Okay, so you are making a motion to approve staff's recommendation and to deny the application.
Yes, yeah.
Do we have a second?
In my first instinct, I'm gonna go with it and I'll second that motion
With
for
that,
now.
we have, at this point, we can go ahead and vote. Do we have any approvals for this motion?
Aye.
No. Those against this motion?
Aye.
All right, looks like the motion fails. Comes back to the DAP for another motion.
I would make a motion to approve it with the staff recommendation of the protective overlay as done by MAPC.
Okay.
So you said, sorry, just for clarification. So there's the staff recommended protective overlay, and then there's the MAPC recommended protective overlay.
I would make a motion to approve it
With
with
those,
the protective overlay as MAPC did.
Okay.
yes, yes.
Would you accept a substitute motion to do it with the staff's protective overlay with that 10-foot buffer?
No, I wouldn't, because I think the developer said that was the deal breaker.
I mean, if 2 feet's a deal breaker,
All right, so we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Yeah, see what you're saying.
Those for this motion,
Aye. I think that's what we were looking for.
so it's 5.
You bring it up.
Opposed?
Okay, so I need to see a raise of hands. Those for this motion, 5. Against this motion?
aye.
All right, it looks like the motion passes 5-1. All right. Thank you, guys.
5-1.
It was 5-1, correct.
Thank you for leadership now.
Maybe
it's a little bit the hour too.
All right.
We got
So,
good bits.
do we have any
Have a good
updates,
night.
issues, or reports?
Updates and reports. Real quickly, two
Okay,
things. We'll meet again before this, which is our neighborhood is going for a trunk or treat, like everybody else will. on Hawaii Day, 2 to 4. And second, honor to, I talked with both you and city council person Ballard about this already. The neighborhood interest in that 3601 North Amity property is growing. Or it's what may happen. You can.
I'll pass that word along to Maggie when I see her tomorrow morning.
I don't know where it's going, but the interest is growing.
All right.
I just have one this Saturday. You know that I'm gonna say it's park run, but the special thing I'm gonna say about this next Saturday is the year anniversary of the Exploration Place Park Run. And just a little status update in that year. We have broken the average attendance for national park runs, and we've also made the record for the best attended park run in America.
That is really exciting. That
Still,
is-
Lost Opportunity is a free timed 5K. You can run, jog, walk, bring your dog, bring your kids. It's all volunteer run, and every Saturday, 8 o'clock at Exploration Place Park Run. That's it.
Every Saturday.
Yeah.
How many runners do you get?
Typically, we get around 70
Wow.
runners come out.
It's a 5K.
It's a 5K, and
And what's the best time usually on a Saturday?
you mean the best finishing time?
Yeah.
So our course record for this park run, I believe, is just north of 16 minutes. Short, but we're out there for as long as the last person wants to be.
Excellent.
We don't, we supply last place. Well,
The next one, I'm sorry, like I said, my brains are shutting down. The next one is.
this Saturday, every
This
Saturday.
Saturday. I am gone this Saturday. I want,
Okay,
it's every Saturday.
motion.
Hold on, I think we're trying to adjourn.
Do you have any other updates, comments, reports?
No.
And with that, we have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I have a question.
Oh.
Somebody might know the answer to this. My wife wants to know, on September 26th, the effigy meeting. Is there an effigy meeting on September 26th about the towers on the Red Bud Trail?
I don't have that information, but I can definitely ask and then I can get you. I'll see what I can find out. So you have the day of September 26th,
Yeah, September 26th is what she thinks she heard, so.
and this is the Evergy polls.
Yeah. the
At-
polls. It's gonna be at the Metroplex.
Okay.
But I'm not sure of when, and I'm trying to clarify it.
I can, let me get your contact information. I'll ask and then I'll definitely see what I'm able to find out.
Sure.
It looks like we had a motion,
Seconded.
second.
Yes.
All right.
See y'all later.
The Tallgrass Film Fest is coming up.